mean, fundamentally, what we see about this law is that this law, for the first time in our state, the first time in our country that I'm aware of, it conditions a person's right to vote on their financial wealth, okay? It says you will have a right to vote in local government if and only if your community is wealthy enough and has a tax base that's doing good right now in time of a financial crisis. A financial crisis that, I remind you, is across the country. Now, Public Act 4 turns on its head the economics that we've seen, and it's taking a national financial crisis, one that's affected every corner of the state, and attempted to say, well, this really isn't a statewide crisis or a national crisis. It's a crisis of the local community. And the local communities that they're pointing the finger at are working poor in poor communities. Communities that haven't had sufficient tax base, who saw massive job loss during this recent economic depression, recession, or whatever you want to call it. It's targeting those communities and saying, you caused this problem. The problem that you have is solely on you. That's a highly bigoted assumption, that this local community somehow, despite a national recession, we're going to ignore that national recession, and we're going to say, no, the local community is so corrupt, so incompetent, that they can't run their affairs. That's really turning a blind eye to the fact that our manufacturing base has been ripped out of this country in the past, 2 years, after having been ripped out dramatically for the previous 10, 15 years. It's ignoring the fact that these communities have, their unemployment rate has spiraled. We can call, I'm not sure what it is in the state now, I think it's probably around 12, 13% officially. In cities such as Detroit, Benton Harbor, that's approaching 25 to 50%. And we're pretending that somehow the reason they can't balance their books now is not because there's no jobs. It's not because their real estate that they paid for those houses and took out loans on has collapsed. It's not worth half of what they borrowed against. That those things have nothing to do with it. It's simply that the people they elected as officials don't know how to balance a checkbook. I think there's racism embedded in that, and there's unquestionably a bigotry against the poor. You can't get away from it. Our lawsuit puts in front of the Supreme Court and in front of the state court system the question whether our Constitution has any meaning. Okay? Does it mean what it says when it says to us we have a right to local government? And does it, let me rethink that a little. Does it mean, give me 1 sec. All right. What the case asks is whether or not the state constitution has any meaning. Do we have a right to local government? Do we have a right to elect our local officials? When the state constitution says the people of a locality have the right to adopt their city charter, which is essentially the local constitution of the city, when it says that they have that right, over and above the state legislature, are we going to protect that right or not? Or does it become disposable when there's a financial downturn? Does our democracy become disposable when there's a financial downturn? We're going to find out at least what the courts say. I think I know what people will say, because to a person, whether they're conservative or liberal or progressive or have no political stripe at all, they assume we have those rights. And I think they'd be very interested to know if somehow our court system and our state officials don't think we do have those rights.